Therapists of Reddit. What was your biggest "I know I'm not supposed to judge you but holy sh*t moment? Okay, real therapist here. I got one. Some of my clients are shockingly bad at giving themselves credit, holy shit. Like they might get a nearly straight A GPA in a brutal major while battling depression, or overcome years of phobia and get behind the wheel again, or write a literal novel, or raise a kid as a single parent with low income, or build new relationships after being burned, or cope with OCD well enough to hold down a job. And they'll talk about themselves as if everyone on earth is better than them, as if their accomplishments are worthless. And I know it's because of depression or anxiety or another condition, but I'm often stunned by how differently I see them compared to how they see themselves. I work in mental health and have worked in acute and crisis settings for the majority of my career. The most notable event I experienced was when a young person had presented with significant ongoing suicidal ideation who was dealing with a lot of shit. I spent a lot of time with them, mostly de-escalation and working out what the plan should be moving forward. One of their parents came in a little while later and I had the opportunity to speak to them about where their child was and what had been going on, with their consent of course. Midway through me trying to explain some of the psychological constructs and ways the parent could help, they said to me, "Is this going to take much longer? I have a show to go and watch." All I can say is, I never judge my patients. I have never walked their path or viewed the world through their eyes. But the people around them who perpetuate the suffering of the people I work with through ignorance, malice and selfishness, I judge them. Edit, and a shameless one. I've tried to reply to as much as I could. I've enjoyed some of what I would assume as trolling and talking about some other people's experiences, as it's given me a chance to reflect on some of my own stuff. But I must go to bed. I'd like to ask one thing of anyone who reads this: remember that you can help. Even just by asking how someone is or wishing them well. People who you think may be struggling and even people who aren't. This year has been hard on us all, and I appreciate all of you who have said that those in care services have difficult jobs, but we have all struggled this year. Please be as kind as you can to each other, and I hope we can all look forward to a good December and even better New Year. Edit 2. My use of the word judge needs some clarification. I do judge in some ways. It's hard not to with what I see, who I work with, and the situations they experience or have experienced. What I mean by not judging is that I do not allow my judgments to distort what I am seeing or how I am working, which will normally be to the benefit of the patient and those around them, trying to help them achieve their goals and meet their needs. Final edit. I didn't think this post would get as big as it has. And I cannot respond to every comment individually by any means. I'm sure the post will be getting less attention moving forward, but I just wanted to clarify some things. This parent, who many people have made multiple assumptions about, was not trying to redirect, deflect or remove themselves from the situation by stating they had a show to watch. The show being something else people have assumed was a TV show. Remember, I've made the comment above in the context of a situation that lasted around 5 to 6 hours for me, but took you a few minutes to read. With everything that's going on right now, I wanted to make this post to let people know. Those working in mental health have heard a lot. We don't judge you for how or what you're feeling, and we want to work with you to help you. I simply wanted to help in some way with a comment on the internet that I wrote in one go about an experience I have had. I know that the response to this has been overwhelmingly positive, but I would also like to say I did not mean to cause any offense or upset to anyone or claim that I am some sort of unachievable goal of non-judgment. Anyway, I'm going to try and forget about this now. During my training, I was asked, how would you feel if a client were to come to you and admitted they were a pedophile that was on the edge of committing seriously horrific acts? Could you see that person as another human being that needed help, or were your personal feelings about the abhorrent behavior too strong? This factor leads some people to not continue my course on to the next level, but it really illustrates the level of non-judgment needed in this field. We all have our own personal feelings, of course, but these get talked about in supervision. Edit. Wow, thanks for the awards. I'm glad it's raised an interesting topic for discussion. I'm enjoying reading them all, even if I don't have the time to reply. Personally, in this instance I remember the Gandhi quote, "Hate the sin, not the sinner." Also spelling. When I was underage, I got caught with a drink on Bourbon Street and got a minor in possession. I was telling my therapist about it, and said that the police caught me with a hand grenade in New Orleans. He didn't realize that a hand grenade was a type of drink, and it was funny to watch him try to process that his patient might have just casually told him that he had been caught with a fragmentation grenade. He took a big long pause, and said, "Where did you even find a grenade?" I realized the misunderstanding quickly and corrected him. But for a moment he definitely was thinking, holy shit, how do I deal with this? Therapist here. To piggyback on what others have said, it is highly unlikely for me to have moments where I judge my clients. It happens sometimes, but I'm able to shut down those thoughts quickly in my head and return to being present for the people I see. People are so incredibly complex that my judgment wouldn't have any meaning anyway, and it doesn't have a place in our work together. I will admit though, something that does get me feeling a little salty is when I have a client's parent that attempts to sabotage the therapeutic relationship I have with their child, or pulling them out of therapy entirely when some of the things we talk about challenges some potentially unhealthy family dynamics. I don't feel anger toward the parents, mostly I feel bad for the kid. Edit. Wow. All I have to say is that I am incredibly humbled by all of you that have shared your stories. Even though these moments are so steeped in pain, what hits me is the incredible amount of strength present in spite of the upbringing and parents many of you have had. I work with youth and adolescents who have anxiety, trauma, and/or depression. Some of the kids I worked with had some pretty severe attachment issues. Regardless of this, I never thought I'd have to seriously explain. You can't just buy a straitjacket for your kid. Feeding your kid ultra-spicy ramen each night instead of the meal everyone else is eating isn't specifically defined as abuse, but you have to understand the emotional abuse that this causes. Your kid isn't trying to kill you because they stand in your doorway at night crying. That's likely because they're scared of their traumatic nightmares, but feel like you will just yell at them if they wake you up. Edit. Removed a phrase. Edit 2. Thank you all for your questions and support. This case has really helped to shape my approach to therapy, and has highlighted the importance of healthy communication between parents and kids. My number one tip: don't let someone else tell you how you feel, think. If someone says, "You're angry with me," or something to that effect, ask yourself if you really are. If you're not actually angry, then don't spend a second more on it. A lot of kids, family members get hung up on trying to justify their own actions according to someone else's perception. Edit 3. Fixed straitjacket spelling. No, it's not a jacket for sexual orientations. I'm a licensed psychologist and I'll tell you I've never judged my patients. The world is so full of judgment and it's my job to objectively look at someone who's suffering and offer them empathy and a path towards healing. The one thing I've judged is the situations that people survive and continue to live their lives. I've worked with torture survivors, survivors of genocide and famine. I've worked with people whose entire villages were wiped out because a warlord wanted the water well that was sitting in the town. It always gives me pause in terms of the anguish some people face and their resilience. So if I have one message, it would be in the words of R.J. Palacio: be kind, for everyone is fighting a hard battle. Not a judgment. You kind of train your brain not to judge, because you are seeking to understand and help. When you do those things, you can't simultaneously judge. We could all use a little more of that in real life, I suppose. I'll share this though. I do feel concerned about this recent phenomenon of young people I worked with self-diagnosing, sharing, and identifying very closely with mental illness. As if the pendulum quickly swung from, never, ever share your feelings, to, OMG, you're depressed? All of us are too. Life's challenges can be tough and they don't need a scientific sounding label to be valid and real. You are not your diagnosis. We can find validation and support in healthier ways. Edit. Thank you for the Golden Awards. And thanks to everyone for some really nice discussion. I'm a dude. I was brutally raped multiple times between the ages of 7 and 10. My one and only attempt at try to get help from a therapist was one of the most awful experiences of my life. I attempted to get help in my early 20s. Upon first going in, I was asked what had happened to me, after explaining a basic outline of the abuse. I could already see that she was very dismissive and seemed not to really believe me. She then asked about my relationship status. At the time I was in a long-term relationship with a woman who had 2 kids, boys. Upon finding this out, she immediately demanded the names and address of my girlfriend, names of the kids, and said she would be immediately getting in touch with social services to ensure that I wasn't abusing them. I can't put into words just how much that destroyed me mentally. That she could obviously see something in me that I couldn't see. That somehow she was certain that I would be an abuser. I started to cry. She told me to pull myself together. I also can't put into words the pathological visceral hatred I have for pedophiles and rapists. If I could get away with murdering them, I would. I would never ever inflict the absolute nightmare I went through on any child. I got up and left. I came very close to the edge of suicide that day. I also immediately ended the relationship because I couldn't deal with the thought that the kids might be at risk because of me. It's now 21 years later and I'm tearing up typing this. Because of that experience I have never sought therapist help again. I survive mentally, but it's not good survival. Edit wow. Just wow. I am absolutely blown away by the internet strangers who are sending love and care to me. I am currently alone, in the dark, in tears, reading all these replies. To answer a few questions. I'm in the UK. I heard she was fired a few years later after a patient of hers committed suicide and mentioned her therapy in the note he left. I am in a position where currently I'm in such a fragile, very heavily medicated, mental state that if I saw another therapist and got the same reaction that I know my mind would break and I'd take my own life. Every day is a struggle to find reasons to stay alive. I'm sure I have PTSD as I feel the need to be armed with a knife constantly. Despite being a big dude, 6'4", 110 kilograms. I sleep with a knife under my pillow. I often wake up screaming. I tend to be standoffish with everyone, deliberately keeping people at a distance. I know I'm a broken person. I've even avoided relationships with women with kids because I don't want my broken mental state to somehow affect those kids in any way. I have attempted suicide twice and both times I survived. I just want there to be a pill or operation where I could completely wipe out the past, even wipe me out, wake up and just have a new me, minus the depression, anxiety, fear, PTSD, crushing hatred of myself. It would be nice to wake up one day and actually be able to see some value in myself. I'd love to be married and be a dad, but currently I'm in a state where I can't ever see or allow that to happen. I'm too scared that my mental state would fuck up my wife and kids' lives. I can't allow that. They should be reported. They are not fit to practice. Here's my most recent one. As the pandemic worsened here in the US and more lockdowns are on their way, one of my most extroverted clients and I brainstormed ways to meet her social needs while remaining safe. The following week she canceled her session and told me that she's positive for COVID after attending an orgy, which definitely wasn't one of our ideas. I let out the deepest, most defeated sigh after I hung up the phone. Clinical psychologist working primarily in forensics here. This means my clients are usually involved in legal proceedings, family court, juvenile court, criminal court, etc. My job is usually to evaluate or provide treatment. I'm not there to judge, that's the judge's job, but of course I have my thoughts. I am usually impressed by the justifications people make for shitty behavior. The one that irks me the most is when parents manipulate their child against the other parent. I've had to do therapy for a 5-year-old who said she doesn't want to see a parent because they haven't paid child support. Excuse me? What 5-year-old knows, understand, or needs to be worried about child support?